My anxiety was through the roof because I was through the roof. Last year, I was on stage giving a talk when I accidentally flew up and out of the auditorium. And this was possible because I wasn't on a physical stage like this one, but on a digital stage in virtual reality. There's me up on stage right there as my avatar. Got my power suit on, got my hair done, and I'm also wearing a headset similar to the one there. And so is my audience. And so we can actually look around and see each other and feel like we're together in the same space. And my talk was about the creative future of presenting and how in VR you can actually fly around during your talk. And I was going to do a demo and actually do a quick test flight. But instead, I grabbed the little flight tool a bit too hard and shot straight up and out of the building. There I am right there. Wait for it, wait for it. Oh, there I go. And so you can see how I felt as I was flying up into the sky. And I found myself pretty high up, looking down at the auditorium below me, where all those people were still waiting for me, but staring at an empty stage. Here I was, supposed to be the expert, but had just messed up a simple demo in the very first second. How could I possibly get back down and face them when I just looked like a total fraud? And so I thought, maybe instead of getting back down, I could use the escape hatch. Just take off my headset and get out of there. But then I said, well, wait a minute. I'm still a little early in my talk. I still have so much left to share with whoever might still be down there. I owe it to the audience to get back. So very slowly this time, I grabbed the flight tool again and lowered myself back down through the roof, back onto the stage. The crowd was still there, but silent. And suddenly, they clapped and even sent a flurry of digital hearts and smiley faces up in the air. And I knew they were still with me. In fact, they thought it was hilarious. And it kind of was after the fact. And we laughed it off together and continued. It's still my most unusual, awkward tech fail to date, but I was so glad that I was able to push past that self-doubt and get back on that stage and not use that escape hatch. Now, you all might be thinking, well, it's good, I'll never have tech issues like that. I don't even use VR, much less present in it. But I'm sure you have had your own tech-related frustrations and embarrassments before, maybe in trying to figure out a new app or a social media channel or a new tool you're supposed to use at work. Digital frustration is real, and we all want to reduce it and get more confident with using new technology, but often don't know how. And this is a worthy goal, by the way, because 2020 showed us just how quickly we might need to adopt new technologies. Before the pandemic, many people hadn't even used tools like Zoom or Teams before. Some had never even heard of them. But very quickly, in just a matter of 2 weeks, had to become everyday users. And who knows, we may be 2 weeks away from having to use something else that we've never even heard of or used before. And so being ready for whatever comes our way next is critical. But what I see all too often is people's past tech-related frustrations and embarrassments, they build up over time and become what they call, or what I call, the digital imposter syndrome. It's this idea that there's a separate world of technology out there in which they don't fully belong. And if you personally haven't experienced this, you probably know someone who has. It usually comes out in words like, well, I'm not tech savvy, I'm not a technology person, I'm not a digital native, I'm technologically challenged, or I'm just bad with this tool or that tool. And the people, ironically, who say this are usually very smart, resilient, resourceful people. But what they're inadvertently doing is mixing their past experience with technology with their identity as a person. And this has real personal and economic consequences. Labeling yourself as not tech savvy makes you much more closed off to new technologies. And then that limits your opportunity significantly to connect with people across platforms, to do things more efficiently, and even progress as fast as you would like in your career. Digital tools are constantly reshaping how we work, so ongoing learning is critical. If you're just starting off in your career, it helps you get that competitive edge. And if you're already seasoned, it helps you stay relevant and not fall behind. It's really an ongoing, lifelong skill for everyone. But the good news is that we can sharpen our digital skills much faster and easier than we often realize. We proved it in 2020. The pandemic thrust us into a sort of time machine, compressing years of digital advances into mere months and creating millions of digital firsts. First time seeing a doctor remotely, first time getting groceries delivered to your house, and first time gathering together in new and virtual ways. There were Zoom happy hours and birthdays and graduations and Thanksgivings and weddings and so many more classes that were virtual and meetings and even conferences. And we were dropped into the digital deep end, but we managed to swim. And in the same way, we've adapted to lots of technology shifts over the years. Computers, the internet, social media, smartphones, smartwatches, and so many apps that have now transformed the way that we work and live our lives. But think of the very first time that you used a smartphone. You're probably like, what is this? Why do I need this? Will I ever be able to use this? My first one was an iPhone, and I had the hardest time typing on the keyboard, especially the passwords with like special characters and all that stuff. But we eventually all pushed through that learning curve, and now smartphones have become second nature. And even something like driving, if you think about it, required a massive amount of learning. A car is kind of like a big gadget. You have to work the pedal, the steering wheel, the gear shift, the dashboard controls and navigation, all of that without crashing. And so it's a lot of learning, but most people do it now without even thinking. So if you are carrying a smartphone or a driver's license right now, you deserve a massive amount of credit for your ability to learn and adapt. And this is why you are already much more tech savvy than you think. You've figured things out before, and you can do it again with anything. And at this point, you might say, okay, that makes sense, Yulia, but you're the one flying around in VR. It's probably a lot easier for you. But actually, that was not always the case. In fact, the reason that I'm so passionate about overcoming the digital imposter syndrome was because I used to have it. Because I was never a programmer or hardcore gamer, for years I also considered myself a non-technology person. And I labeled myself as such and did things consistent with that label, like being always the last one to upgrade my technology, almost as a badge of analog honor. But then one day, I was making a PowerPoint presentation for work, and I was asked to use some creativity and make some animations on one of the title slides. And I was like a deer in headlights. I'd never used animations before. I didn't consider myself PowerPoint savvy. I had no idea how I was going to get this done and get those animations together. So the deadline was coming, so I had to feverishly Google around for articles and user forums and video tutorials to see what I could possibly find. And then I started learning a little bit here and there and tinkering around with the different animations. And most of my experiments were not that great, but there were actually some that were interesting. Like, for example, I realized that if you take a bunch of circles, kind of like this, and also some rectangles, and you make them kind of pulse back and forth, and then you take a bunch of them, you can actually put them on top of a night city, similar to this. And then that brightens up the picture and brings it to life. Very simple, but unique enough to make that creative title slide for the client. And then I thought, well, what else could I do? This is really interesting, actually. So I started playing around more and even making my own tutorials. Like, here's a 3D model of a castle. And then you can drop that in PowerPoint onto a grassy field. And then with the camera effects, you can actually fly into it and then look up and see a dragon overhead. And this is done purely in PowerPoint with some 3D models and advanced camera effects. And then I kept experimenting, playing around, and doing more tutorials. And eventually Microsoft noticed, and they gave me the MVP award, which is like a global power user. And this journey from essentially PowerPoint imposter to recognized power user made me realize that I could use the same can-do and can-learn approach to really learning any technology. So for example, the other day, I made my own version of that Princess Leia hologram effect from Star Wars. Here I am, there's mini-me standing there, and all this took was an app on my phone called Volume. This typically takes thousands of dollars to make in a studio, and the fact that I was able to recreate it today shows just how quickly technology is moving. And I now love to stay on that cutting edge because I've now relabeled myself from tech imposter to tech innovator. And this is why whenever I hear anyone say any version of I'm not tech savvy, I hold an on-the-spot intervention. Here's how it goes. Step 1, lose the label. If you take anything away from this talk, I hope it is that self-labels are often completely not true and massively hold you back. So get rid of them. And if you feel them creeping up, like I did when I was up in that virtual sky, just push them away and don't let them stick. Step 2 is remember that everything is learnable. You know how some people have that go-to person for technology questions? Well, I am that person for many people. And guess what? I only know the answers to about half the questions that I get asked. The other half, I Google and get the answer. So you can often cut out the middle woman here because our collective knowledge is searchable. So any technology is learnable and any tech challenge is overcomable. And third and final, get curious and experiment. One of the best ways to rip off that non-technology label is to actually start playing around with technology. And it's not just about technology for technology's sake alone. Try to use it to solve your mini challenges. Like for example, when I'm outside with my kids, they're always bringing me some new bug or flower or leaf and asking me what it is. And I typically don't know. But what I could do is I could Google it and just type in like yellow flower with pointy yellow leaves or something like that. But a better way isn't to Google it, but to Google Lens it. Google Lens is an app that uses AI to look through your camera and identify the objects it sees. All you have to do is download the app and then point and click just like a camera. Here it was brown-eyed Susan, but you can also use it for other plants, flowers, logos, even landmarks. And so it looks very simple, it is very simple, but it makes you a tech superhero to curious minds. And this is, of course, just one of millions of things that you can do with your phone. See what other small problems you can solve throughout the day. Make it fun. Make it like a tech treasure hunt. Getting in the regular habit of exploring new technologies makes you feel much more digitally savvy, and more importantly, gives you the confidence that whatever comes in the next 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, you'll be able to tackle it. And the truth is, we all have to. There's not really a choice anymore. There's no going back in that digital time machine, only accelerating into the future. The digital road ahead will be windy, it will be bumpy, it will be shrouded in fog at times, but you already have all you need to navigate that journey. So forget the escape hatch and get in the driver's seat. Thank you.